On the X-Files so far, we've usually covered manga I've considered to be pretty good overall, having some positive elements or bits that I've enjoyed. But this time we're digging deep into the filing cabinet and pulling out one of the darker entries to have graced Jump's pages. Not because it's disturbing or edgy or anything, but just because it's plain bad. Blame the scamps over on the Discord for this one because it was voted for our monthly X manga read-through. Now, without further ado, let's get into one of the worst manga to have ever been serialized in Weekly Shonen Jump. Full name, Swot. Start date, July 26, 2010. End date, November 22nd, 2010. Total chapters, 20. Compiled into 3 volumes. Naoya Sugita would begin their career in the early 2000s, entering numerous manga competitions before serializing their first manga in Jump in 2006 named Zan. It would only last 18 chapters and seems to be a school battle manga with a focus on swords. Despite its roughness, it would garner some passionate fans, as these fan-made anime openings suggest. Sugita would then publish the one-shot version of Swot in issue 52 of Jump in 2009, with it getting picked up for serialization a few months later in 2010. Swot begins with the introduction of Manabizaki Kyo, the new transfer student who, as the title of the manga suggests, is a Swot, someone who studies a lot, which characterizes Kyo to a T. Perhaps too well, as it's his main personality trait, tied with him yelling about killing people for disturbing his studies. I don't know if the author thought this was funny or endearing, but it just makes the protagonist super unlikable from the get-go. He spends the entire manga telling people he'll kill them, beating people up, or just being plain rude. His goal is to get a job at NASA and ultimately build a UFO so he can gain further knowledge in outer space, and the explanation for his unnatural strength throughout the series is that he needs to be strong enough to fight back aliens. Okay, Mulder. It's a flimsy reason and is brushed away as a gag anyway. The plot largely consists of Kyo meeting new delinquent characters who he beats up or insults, only for them to befriend him, which feels really forced, especially in the case of Toji, the first other character we're introduced to, who is a boy who thinks Kyo is really cool and wears a helmet most of the time, his defining character trait. A lot of his appearances devolve into him just bootlicking Kyo and saying he's cool or kind, when in reality I think the opposite is shown most of the time. It makes him being an asshole stand out even more. Then we have Hasuno Nene, a female delinquent who wants to give up the delinquent lifestyle and asks for Kyo's help in studying. She ends up having a really forced romantic subplot with Kyo, with a lot of shonen romance tropes thrown in there for good measure, but it mostly rings out as really hollow since no one in their right mind would find anything lovable about our protagonist. This is our main trio for the manga, with some enemies coming over to their side after they've been beaten, which I would describe as pretty gimmicky on the whole. There's nothing really going on for any of them. That's kind of the entire manga, to be honest. It's a pile of tropes and gimmicks. Throughout the story, things are brought up like the Teppen, which I think is the name for the big boss at the top of the school, but it's poorly explained and is just thrown out as a motivator for our heroes to reach, even though Kyo's main goal is studying. There's no correlation between events and motivations most of the time. It's very poorly strung together. Seemingly, he only fights all these delinquents throughout the story because the school system and them are bothering him, and he doesn't want his so-called friends to get hurt. But again, no friendship is really established, as he treats everyone, including these supposed friends, like crap. Another trope used is the classic shonen power system, and this time we have something called Resolve. Resolve is also poorly explained and stupidly basic. The explanation for its existence involves humans amplifying the electricity within them to conjure up unique powers, like super strength or splitting a weapon into two. They're usually incredibly basic and boring. But Kyo is special, as he has the power of reverse resolve, which means he can amplify the electricity in the air and not just his body. This is only used a few times though in the manga, and it doesn't seem to do much other than giving him a super strong aura and big punches, which is ultimately just really boring. So after poorly setting up its world, characters, a romance subplot, and a battle system, Swot then enters its final arc. You're not really missing much story-wise, it's just been random delinquent fights up until now, but by the end a group called Aki starts to inject students with a drug, but the drug is incomplete, leading to those who've taken it becoming zombies for an hour until their death. So Kyo must take down the group's leader in order to save those who've been injected. In this final fight, Kyo seemingly dies, but through the power of unearned friendship, he just comes back alive, successfully using reverse resolve to save the day. The final chapter then sees Kyo running around, not really resolving anything. The romantic subplot doesn't result in anything, no UFO is built, and it ends on a very bland page of a different high school's teppen or leader challenging Kyo to a fight. His response is that he'll kill them, showing nothing has changed from the beginning and he's still the shitty person he's always been. It's ironic that the manga has a battle system called Resolve, and yet it resolves nothing within its story. One odd thing about Swot, as well as Psyren, which ended or was axed the following week, was that no new series came out before they ended or after. Only 10 issues after Swot would end would Dois Sol begin in the magazine, meaning some weeks only around 18 series were ongoing at once. This isn't uncommon in Jump, and sometimes there are just less series in the magazine, especially when some manga take a break week like My Hero Academia, Jujutsu Kaisen, or One Piece. But I think there would have been room theoretically to keep Swot around for a good few extra weeks if Jump really wanted to. Which is to say, Jump didn't want to. Swot is a terrible manga, and I can point to almost anything as a reason why it might have gotten axed. Predominantly its protagonist, who no one seems to like, as he's just horrible. Its lack of general direction, as well as its heavy and heavy-handed use of tropes, also leads it to being insignificant. There's no reason to read Swot. 2010's Jump was full of battle manga at the time, with Medaka Box taking on a very similar setting, but being better in every way, and was also decently popular already. It was a subpar manga, with other manga doing the exact same things at the same time, so even if it wasn't absolutely horrible, it still probably wouldn't have lasted in the magazine. I don't think Swot should have ever been serialized in the first place, to be honest. It was doomed from the beginning because it excels at nothing besides annoying its audience, and I 100% think it deserved to be replaced earlier than it should have, but it didn't because 2010 was a really bad year for new Jump manga. But let's hear what some of the Discord has to say, especially since it's their fault we're covering this manga. First off, we have Mr. Graham, who I think was the most positive on Swot in the server, actually liking Toki and some of the comedy elements, but did criticize the protagonist and his lack of direction. They also bring up the hammy dialogue, which the translation team likely took some liberties with, considering the amount of swearing, which adds to Swot's edge factor. Sponge had a lot to say, all pretty negative, criticizing every aspect of the series. They mentioned the UFO idea not going anywhere, and the protagonist's goals being at odds with its delinquent premise. Describing it as something a talented 6th grader would make feels really accurate to me, and it made me laugh. Cody gave me an extensive review of the manga, but also likened it to something your average school friend might make. They had similar complaints with pretty much everything, the characters blending in and looking similar being one of them. I'm glad some people did enjoy it for its edge though, not everyone suffered through it like me. Someone who did suffer though was Cactus, which I'll just read his thoughts verbatim because I think it's funny that this manga can inspire so much emotion. Swot is one of the worst manga I read. Unlikable and annoying MC. Shallow support casts that have no chemistry at all. Nothing burger villains with no substances. Completely unnecessary power system that basic also poorly and not cleverly used. Art of varies degrees from fine to what the fuck this abomination is, especially in some battle scenes. Most painful first chapter that refuses to end. Holy fuck. There was a lot of buzz about how bad it actually was on the Discord. I'll highlight Ari and Sheep's reactions on the Discord here, who recognize how bad it is and liken it to something that would be funny if it was ironic or a parody. I think overall it led to a lot of discussion about bad manga and its enjoyability, that a truly bad manga is more interesting than something just boring, and I'd be inclined to agree. There's definitely value in engaging with bad media to know where the limits are and to appreciate the good stuff even more. Still, undeniably, I think everyone thought Swot was pretty bad. I didn't do any polls and figured no one would really comment on it due to its relative obscurity, but surprisingly I got quite a few comments on YouTube and Twitter which were interesting. Some range from people thinking the series looked cool, and please just don't read it if you think it looks cool, it's really not. Although some people did express some enjoyment of Swot, which surprised me, and they remembered it being okay. I don't want to call anyone liars here, but memory can be a fickle thing.
Memory ain't so great.
Oh, yeah? Maybe this'll refresh your memory.
I don't know, it's still kind of hazy.
How about this?
Yeah, I remember him. I used to see him around. Why do you want to know?
I can't tell you that.
Well, maybe this'll help.
I really don't think I should.
Yeah, you still don't think so?
All right, his name is Nordberg. He's a cop.
He was no cop. He was dealing H.
What?
I'm telling you, he was dirty.
Oh, you sniveling scum. I ought to run you in right now.
All right. He worked at Ludwig Shipping. He tried to push something on one of my boys, I swear it. So what are you going to do about it, copper?
Well, why should I tell you?
Maybe this'll help.
I still don't think I should tell you.
Spot me at 20? How about now?
All right, I'm going down to Ludwig's office. I'll find out if you're telling the truth.
Roland Schur also mentioned it was one of the worst Jump series they've ever read, which I agree with, and I know he knows his stuff because he also mentioned Sporting Salt. I pray I never have to make an Axe Files on it. Don't you dare ask for a Sporting Salt Axe Files. I know what you're all like. Following the end of Swot, Sugita would disappear from Weekly Shonen Jump and manga in general for a few years, likely honing their skills as they would reappear in 2014 with a manga adaptation of Majin Bone in Saikyo Jump, a digital card game and anime from Bandai, but this manga would only last 2 volumes. His next work, Muttsuri Shinken, would debut in 2016 in Jump Plus, running for 3 volumes and following a boy with a secret technique to destroy women's clothes so he can study their breasts and save the world, which sees men oppressed by women. And if you thought all the goodwill I had for this mangaka was gone after me reading that, you'd be wrong, since as of 2022, they are in charge of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush manga. Suffice to say, I don't really like the Yu-Gi-Oh! Rush series. I'm not usually very negative in my videos, but geez, Naoya Sugita's profile is rough. I'll need to read Zan at some point, but I do not have high hopes based on his later works. Next time you think about the worst Shonen Jump manga you've read, and it's something like Bone Collection, Zipman, or Head Gill, just count yourself blessed that you haven't had the pleasure of reading Swot. And if you have, welcome to the club. That being said, if you genuinely have different opinions on the series and like it, do let me know why in the comments. And if you'd like to see more videos on Shonen Jump, consider subscribing and checking out the various other Axe manga I've covered, as well as the numerous history videos I've made covering Shonen Jump's earlier manga. As always, thank you for watching, remember to be kind, and take care.